There you go. Recording in progress. I want to wish each and every one of you a wonderful golden winter. It is said in the name of Reb Pinchas Karitzer that he used to call the winter nights the Gildene Nächten, the golden nights, because the nights were very long. And if you wake up Chatzos 6 hours after Tzeis HaKechavim, that means that you had a long time to say Tikkun Chatzos, to make his Boidadus, to learn Torah, to get ready for davening. So that is a traditional Breslover bracha, definition. The Gildene Nächten, the golden nights of the winter. And so, Bezat Hashem, we have finished with the holidays of Chodesh Tishrei. Amazing stuff between Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and between Sukkot, Simchas Torah. Gewaltige Sache. Let's take a quick look at Sipurei Maisius and Bezat Hashem continue on our journey. And here we are. So we said that the princess, by the way, you have to excuse me for getting stuck during my speech. I seem to have some kind of a head cold, so my head doesn't work that well in the best of times, so now it becomes even slower. So I apologize in advance. So what happened was the daughter of the emperor was kidnapped. She ran away from the murderer. The murderer was consumed by wild animals. It's a very important lesson in and on its own. Perhaps we'll talk about it a little bit. But that was not the only thing that happened. Because the princess was lost, so the whole mazel of the emperor was also going down. He started arguing with his wife, and they decided, and as he decides to argue, arguing with his wife, he sent a general to a war, and that general was not victorious, and he exiled the generals, and so the same thing with a number of generals. And the citizens realized that he was behaving in a bizarre fashion. So first, he had exiled the empress, and then the generals. And the citizens decided to reverse the situation, recalling the empress and exiling him. Now, the empress could rule the land, and they did so. And the emperor was exiled, and the empress was reinstated, and she ruled the land. This is an important tikkun, an important stage between this and the final redemption, because of what the emperor represented and the damage that caused. This argument between him and his wife which started his downfall, which is another important nakuda to speak about. And while he was exiled, the empress immediately sent out an order to have the Burgher and his wife restored, who the emperor had brought low and turned into paupers, and she brought them into her palace. This is a very important nakuda. So the first thing is that the murderer came to a bitter end. One of the most difficult to understand situations is, I mean, I guess it's a big taiva, I don't know, but people go ahead and they have horrible crime syndicates, and nothing good ever comes out of it. When people go on the bend of doing something bad, nothing good will ever come out of this. It's always this kind of wishful thinking. That somehow, if I will take the means and justify them towards the end, or people are just psychopathic, or whatever, that somehow it will end up good. It never does. It never does. There's no such thing. There's no such thing as something that starts out bad, that prospers on bad, will end up good. This is something that Rabbeinu says in Torah Ches, Likutei Moharan, that Ruach Saora, a storm wind, has a great power only at its hour. But then it dissipates and disappears like it did not exist, just leaving the wreckage behind. Evil only has its hour. People are tempted because they live under the impression that happiness is the result of preconditions. In other words, if you have money, and if whatever this happens to you, or whatever, then you will be happy. It is wrong. Happiness creates good conditions. Happiness is something that needs to exist and needs to be worked on. In fact, Rabbeinu says it's the hardest avodah of them all, that happiness is something that needs to be worked on, totally divorced from outside conditions. It cannot be an ahava tluya badavar. It cannot be happiness that happens because good things happen. Because a glut of good things happening has never prevented anybody from going down the drain. And if you don't believe it, you can ask Marilyn Monroe and the rest of the people that went down the drain under the glut of Hatzlacha. But the second point is there is a belief, a false belief that many men, as they sort of like, unless of course these are people that are supposed to have mozivugim, that if only they would put their wives in their place, that somehow their marriage will be good. And a lot of people live under this false assumption that, especially when they reach various stages of natural crisis, midlife crisis, or whatever it is, that somehow, if only they would have a different wife or would have a different something, whatever, then things would be fabulous. There's no greater fiction than that. Your wife is the source of your success. The Gemara says, honor your wives so that you will get rich. There's nothing that is more mesugel to atzlocha in everything than honoring your wife. In this particular case, it is the empress that instigates the arguments with her husband. But the husband has become a meforsim shel sheker. He's basically a pauper that, because of the luck that fell into his lap, has become a Baal Moifis, has become a Tzaddik Ador. But it's fake. If he would have been moida to his wife, things would have gone differently. The thing is that from the very beginning, his wife told him that the husband of the empress is the son of the Burgher. That's the tzaddik emes. But men are very, very sensitive to digs, b'chlal, especially from their wives, because nobody knows you as totally and as completely as your wife. She's the only one who really, really, really knows you. Everybody else has all kinds of theories about you, but the only one who really knows you is your wife. Only one. She doesn't have the words with which to put it and to tell it to you. So many times, if you want to actually relieve situations which seem lost, your wife is digging into you, just sit there and take it. I'm telling those who are unmarried amongst us, it's part of married life. Listen, there are always good people and bad people, and people with more propensity towards arguments and whatever it is. There's nothing you can do about that. But being able to give your, we said it many times, I will say it many times again and again and again, because it's a lesson which is so important to learn. there's probably no greater gift that you can give your wife than to sit and listen to her as she skewers you about things that you know that she's right. But it's just like, what do you mean? She's wrong. How's she wrong? She's only wrong because she makes you feel yay big. That's all. But if she wasn't right, it wouldn't hurt you. It wouldn't be feeling diminishing to you. And if you think that you can overpower and outmaneuver your wife and get ahead of the game, the result is exactly what happened with the emperor. He exiled his wife, the general loses a war, he's exiled, now the general loses a war. It becomes everybody else's fault except my own. At the end, he's the one who's being exiled. And as we will see, B'ezrat Hashem, this exile that he's being exiled is an end of an era. It's an end of an era of him as a meforsim shel sheker. His wife is an empress. Empress is a Muna. And the first thing she does, she brings into the palace the Burgher and his wife, the Tzaddik Emes, and his Torah. It's not the Geula yet. It's not the redemption yet. But the Meforsim Shel Sheker, the one that was Meforsim that he can do, that he can whatever, was removed. Now what's left is simple Amunah with the Tzaddik Emes in the picture. This is the beginning of the Geula. And so let's get back to the text. When the emperor was being taken away, he asked those taking him to release him. I was an emperor and I certainly did good things for you. Now have pity on me and let me go. I'll definitely not return to this land anymore. You have nothing to fear. Let me go and I will leave. Leave me at least to be free to the few years that I still have to live. It's an important thing to understand that even a meforsim shel sheker also does good things for you. No, he's not what he claims to be. But Rabbeinu says that we owe the meforsim shel sheker a tova that they're holding the olam with the traditional levush. They're keeping us together as a klal, as communities, so we can keep Shabbos, so it can be El Chayidin. Okay, I mean, so they cannot lead us. They cannot lead us to the promised land. They cannot lead us. They cannot make us what we need to become. But they should still do us tovos. And then you will see that this was necessary. They released him and he traveled on. And meanwhile, many years passed. It's very important to know many years pass, meaning when time passes, the rachamim, increase. And the emperor wandered on his own and on until he went out to sea, and the wind carried away his boat. And he also came to the same desert that the others have arrived at. And he finally came to the place where the other two were living. These were the young men, who was the Burgher's son and his own beautiful daughter. But she was dressed now as a man's clothes. And they did not recognize each other, since the emperor has grown long and many years have passed since he left. and their hair also grown long. And they asked him, how did you get here? They asked him. He says, through a tradesman. He said, again, he said, they all say, we came here through a tradesman, a soicher. A soicher is pchinas tzadik, pchinas emuna. Munus chol sivosecha, and schol schol. Just hold this. It says they gave similar answers to his questions, and the three of them remained together, eating and drinking as before. And they played the musical instruments since they could all play, for there was the emperor, and for he was an emperor. And you can see here, an emperor means that he has to be able to play. Play music, talking about somebody who was an Erlich Hayid, somebody who has the very basics of Erlich Hayid. Playing music means that you can bring people together and bring them closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And here the young man was the hardiest of them since he was there the long time. And he brought them meat and they ate. And they burned wood that would have been precious, more precious than gold in a civilized area. The young man tried to convince them that this would be a good place for them to spend the rest of their lives. Now we're talking about a different state of existence where there is a chabura of Ovdei Hashem. Everybody can play music. We already said that music is the code of everything, of Emunah and of Chachma. Rabbeinu says every Emunah has a melody, every Chachma has a melody. Probably ultimately, I don't know, maybe they will finally invent a computer that will be able to encode everything with music. But the main thing is this is the beginning of the Geula. Notice what's going on here. The emperor is the cause of all the calamity. And he's there. The daughter of the emperor, she's the prize. She's Nishmas Yisrael. And she's there. And she's his daughter, and he doesn't know about it. And he's her father, and she doesn't know about it. And the young man is the daughter of the Burgher, who is the bridegroom of Nishmas Yisrael, is Nismas Mashiach. And none of them know of one another. But nevertheless, they find a mutual cause of playing music, burning woods that are more precious than gold in civilized world. We're not talking about the kind of woods that our friend David Axelrod uses to smoke his meat. We're talking about Asagas Alakus. They reach and they come, they speak the Burim, the big tzaddikim don't talk. When people get close to Rabbeinu, when people start learning Teres Rabbeinu, you find just two mitvachidim, just two regular Jews meet together, two Breslev Hasidim meet together, and you hear the talk that they talk between them. You know, I'm trying to daven, it doesn't work for me. You know, I'm trying to this, and every time I start, I fail. And another person, I remember, I have a friend called Eliyahu Mirav, These are refuah shlema, b'ezrat Hashem, shall they have refuah shlema. I remember coming to him one day and I told him, I lost my emunah. Flat out. I told him I lost my emunah. So he said, so what's the big deal? And it says, Vayvaso Yaakov levadoi. Yaakov was left alone. The Zohar Kodesh says, even Hashem left him. That was the Nisan of Yaakov Avinu. And it gave me such tremendous chayas. Because when you are alone and you don't have your chabura, you don't have your friends, you don't have people who are interested in Avodas Hashem, who was I going to confide in? It's a very, very lonely feeling, that suddenly you lose your emunah. You feel like you're in a vacuum. I don't know how many of you have visited that particular place. Usually between Madrega and Madrega, this is where you visit. You visit a Chashecho, a lot of Gdoilo fell on Avram Avinu, the Charad Gdoilo, great fear came on him. Yaakov Avinu is in the middle of the night, and he's all alone. Even Hashem left him. If you don't have people who are into Avodas Hashem, you have nobody to talk to. You have nobody to. Rabbeinu says that Yesh Anashim Sheyesh Lahem Yisurim Gdolim. There are people who are suffering, going through tremendous yisurim, and they don't have who to open up their hearts to and tell the story. What's going to happen if you tell that story? Excuse me, the two doctors over here, excuse me for saying, if you went to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, you went to a psychiatrist, he'll give you a pill. If you went to a psychologist, he'll probably tell you, how does it make you feel? How does it make me feel? It makes me feel horrible. Why? I don't want to hear that. I want to hear something that from an Oved Hashem. I want to hear an answer from somebody who has been there in the trenches with me. You're mechazik me. You have here three strangers that are talking between them diburim of Yir Shemayim, diburim of how do I serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu when I can wake up in the morning, when I have thoughts that Hashem Yirachem, if people only knew what it is I'm thinking about, that I'm doing things with nobody is looking. Hashem Yirachem, if anybody knew about it, what a derision I would be. But you need friends. You need a chabura. When you have a chabura, you can, everybody is on a different level in different times. And it is during that chabura that you can speak. And when somebody is on a high madrega, is on a high and he has, expanded consciousness, he can elevate somebody who happens to be on a dip. And Ishla Yomar Chazak. So the entire Geula, as we will see that things are going on, depends on the fact that you have here three supposed strangers. And these strangers basically are connected to each other in the most incredibly intimate manner. They are the key to the Geula Shlema, and they know absolutely nothing about it. They have zero awareness of it. But they keep on playing music, burning precious woods, saying Diburim Chazakim. I'm telling you that even great rebbes don't speak to each other with the kind of Diburim that the Talmidim of the Tzaddik Emes speak. They would say, my Zayda used to do like this, like this, like this, like this, and this, and that's Tzaddikim. but the kind of diburim that the Talmidim of the Tzaddik speak, the kind of diburim that they use about avodas Hashem, about I need to change my ways. I just can't continue this way. What's going on with me? How can I get to learn Torah? How can I wake up in the morning to go to shul? How can I make his vedidus? How can I open up my heart to give tzedakah? I'm so just have such a jaundiced eye towards everybody. What's going on with me? And these are the kind of diburim that ultimately open up the hearts, as we will see, and bring together B'ezrat Hashem the Geula Shlema. With your permission, we will cut this particular session short due to this head cold that I have, and I want to try to quit while I'm and so B'li B'ezrat Hashem on Wednesday we will learn Likutei Moharan here on Zoom. We'll continue, and I want to wish you, all of you, a healthy and happy winter, full with avodas Hashem, with His Beidadus, with and the Kol Tov.
Kol Tov.